Assalamualaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. This is your biology ma'am Raisa Rozana Khan. In today's video, we are going to learn about Protists, Protozoa, Fungi and Algae, which is the third chapter of your syllabus, chapter 1.5, page 10 and 11 from your book. So, protists, protozoa, fungi, and algae. First of all, let me tell you one thing, that protozoa, fungi, and algae are the categories that fall under protist. Okay, then what is this protist? Well, they are the organisms that can be hardly seen or ever be noticed. But you know one thing, they actually live all around us, and that also in countless millions. Maximum of the protists are unicellular, which means they consist of a single cell, and those cannot be seen without a microscope. However, there are some multicellular protists, which means they consist of many cells, and they have groups of cells specialized into tissues as well. Let's just discuss about protozoa now. Well, protozoas are the kind of protists that consist of single cell. And you know one thing, that the feeding style of protozoa is quite different, where most of the protozoa, on one hand they feed on other protists, but on the other hand some protozoas live as parasite in the bodies of other larger organisms, which actually means that like when a protozoa lives as a parasite, they are in general living in the bodies of an organism, and they are getting everything from the host organism. And not to mention, this method results into many harmful diseases like malaria and dysentery for the host organisms. However, euglena, they can make their own food by photosynthesis just like plants, as they also have chlorophyll inside them. Generally, protozoas are categorized into four groups, but here only three of them are mentioned, that is Rhizopods, Ciliates and Flagellates. Now we will discuss about each in the next three slides. Starting with Rhizopods, Rhizopods are the protozoa that, for instance, move and feed by pushing out parts of their bodies to form temporary arms called the pseudopodia. This is what the pseudopodia looks like. They form this kind of temporary arms, and they do their movement and feeding with these arms. Okay, a category of rhizopods can be amoeba. If you take a look at the diagram, you would see how the amoeba is feeding itself. Well, amoeba and all the other rhizopods, they move and feed by forming these temporary arms, which is the pseudopodia. Well, what they do is they actually surround food, enclosing it in the amoeba's body where it is digested. If you take a look here, you can see this is the part where the food is digested, the bubble part. All right. Then comes ciliates. Actually, these are the protozoas with microscopic hairs, and hairs are therefore called the cilia, and they use this hair for their feeding and for the movement. So this is how they look like. And well, paramecium can be a category of ciliates. So paramecium and all the other ciliates, they use this tiny hairs named as cilia for their feeding and for their movement as well. Lastly, we have flagellates, and these protozoa, they do the movement by lashing a whip like hair called the flagellum. So this is how the flagellum looks like. So with the help of this flagellum, they are doing their movement. Okay, and flagellates, they also consist, like many of them consist of chlorophyll, and which allows them to photosynthesize. So following on to the next protist, that is fungi. Well, most fungi are multicellular. However, yeast, which is an example of fungi, consists of a single cell, but other like molds and mushrooms, they are multicellular. And almost all multicellular fungi, they are actually made up of fine threads, which means they either spread out in a thin network like bread mold, as you can see in the picture, or they might bundle up together and form solid structures like mushrooms. However, the unicellular fungi, that is yeast, you know how these yeast feed themselves? Well, they actually feed by the process of fermentation. Now, what is this fermentation? Well, it is simply, as you can see in the pictures, the conversion of sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Moreover, fermentation is used in brewing coffee, in the making of wine, and in baking as well. Now there's another thing called saprophytes, and which falls under the category of fungi. Well, most moles, mushrooms, and toadstools are saprophytes. This simply means that these fungi they feed by decomposing dead organisms or any part of a living organism that was once alive. It can be a piece of food or a piece of wood. Okay. Moreover, just like protozoa, some fungi live as parasites which can cause disease like ringworms and mildew in plants. At last, we have algae. They are simply plant-like organisms, which means which remains alive by photosynthesis. There are about three main types of algae, but here in your book, the two major ones are mentioned, that is green and brown algae. Green algae mostly live in sea, in fresh water, or in damp places on land, and they can occur in several forms. For instance, they can occur as a single cell, as hollow balls of cells, as fine threads, or as hollow tubes. In contrast, brown algae live in the sea where they often reach several meters in length. Okay, and this is how the brown and the green algae looks like. Okay, so that is it. It is the end of the chapter. I hope all of you understood. Inshallah, we will meet in our next slide. Allah Hafiz.